Let's go, people, let's go. It's Prognosis negative time.
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Sean.
This is Caleb.
And this is Carl.
And welcome back. It is the 45th Prognosis Negative, and one that will be different from all the others. I mean, they're all different, but even formatically, is that a word? Different. In that this is the first time that we do an episode that was born from the passing of a notable actor or actress. We've never done anything like that before on this feed, but here it is. And you are going to hear us discuss the 1988 classic Action Jackson. But before that, we're just going to none of this has really been planned, but we're just going to talk and reflect on the man, the myth, the legend, Carl Weathers. So I guess the way this came up for me before I started talking to my friends, before we had this idea, I think I had just got off a wild phone conversation with someone that was pretty long. And I was like, okay, and done talking. I open up my phone, look at social media, and the very first thing I saw was a picture of Carl Weathers in the headline. And I looked at it, and I just thought, no, there's no way. There's no way. Not right now, not today. And I know there have been other notable celebrity and actor deaths in just the recent months. And of course, this happens all the time. But for whatever reason, this particular one felt different to me. And there's others that can feel different in other ways. But this one, I think it's something like, for instance, was it Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther? That was a pretty significant one for its own unique reasons when it happened. But why this one feels a lot more different to me, I think it's because it's one of those actors, like he's probably one of the very first famous actor faces and names that I learned early on when I was a kid. I think that's part of it. And I've encountered his works at different stages in my life. And I've really enjoyed like those works that I engaged in when they were coming out. And so I think that's part of what's wrapped into it. And that he had an iconic face. You always knew exactly who it was. Even if you saw like a shadow profile, a silhouette of Carl Weathers, you could tell it was Carl Weathers. And it's so cool that the things that he's notable for in film, like it's a range of things that are so wildly different, but yet he just excels in all of it. And I have obviously more to say about this later, but I was just kind of stuck there. And I think it's something about my current age. And like I said, reflecting on my whole childhood, and because it was so unexpected. I know he was, up there in years, and I'm not trying to soapbox at the very beginning, but there's something about him that he just seems like one of those people who will just be timeless because his whole personality and vibe up to current day still felt as young and fresh as ever. I'll get off. But that basically led to, hey, why don't we do this? Because it hit me harder than most celebrity deaths usually do. And I thought, what the heck? Why not dedicate an episode and a topic of Prognosis Negative to Carl Weathers?
That's touching. I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of what you're saying is kind of how I felt. Agreed. When Chadwick Boseman passed, it was a big deal. His recent celebrity and the roles that he had, that he had played were big, significant roles. Negro League baseball players and federal judges and all that stuff. But that was all within like a 6-year time window, which was, again, what made him so impressive, that all of that happened in such a narrow amount of time, and they were very important roles. But you look at Carl Weathers, and you're right, he's been with us. I mean, it was like from the 70s on up until now, he's been putting out quality stuff every decade. and impactful stuff that, resonated with us, like you said, at different points in our lives. When you think about Rocky, and I'll just go straight for that. When you think about Rocky, the super star of that time, Sylvester Stallone, brought him in. And, come on, if we think about that era and that time, there were not that many like guy superstars. So, we can think about, Schwarzenegger, we can think about Sylvester Stallone, there may have been, a couple of other guys, Chuck Norris, but there were just like a few names and we all knew them, it's pre, cable and all that stuff. These were superstars. And so when we see Carl Weathers come in there and he stand face to face with Sylvester Stallone, and not in a Harlem Globetrotters, paper stand-up. He really looked like somebody that could take it to, Sylvester Stallone, and did in the movie. His character was rich and well developed, and he was interesting. So, he wasn't this two-dimensional thing. And the fact, oh, by the way, he's a black dude, that could carry himself in a way that was intelligent, not a caricature. This was radical for that time. So to all of a sudden, elevate this guy right alongside of the superstars of that era, him do it in a impactful, respectful, powerful way. He just jumped right up alongside of so many of those others, the few other heroes that we had at that time. And then, of course, he kept coming back. I can go through the list, the Rockies, the Predators. It was really remarkable that he appeared that way, because if you look around, there was nobody else like him at that time. I mean,
yeah. I love you bring up this point. Sorry to interrupt. But, of course, in the 60s, you had, like, Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. And then, of course, in the 70s, you had like blaxploitation heroes and protagonists. But this was something else. This was like A-list. Mm-hmm. I love the way you described how his character was different and unique, especially for a man of color at the time.
Absolutely. If you're a black person, you're looking for heroes and you're looking for people to cheer for. And it was so rare. You had to always kind of hedge your bets with the guys that they were putting in major motion pictures. You did not feel that compromise when it came to Carl Weathers, and it was, like I said, it's rare. And he was very powerful, handsome, well, intelligent. It was really remarkable, and that really solidified him as an early hero.
And one thing more I'll add, there's been other notable athletes who transitioned onto the screen. But you always knew, oh yeah, so-and-so the former football player, so-and-so the former pro wrestler or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was, 6 days ago old when I learned that Carl Weathers was a professional NFL football player.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Somehow I never knew that my entire life. And I like football. And I never knew that. So that's even more remarkable to me that he was an athlete, a pro athlete. And I literally didn't even know that, because it's always mentioned with everyone else, like when OJ before the 90s, everyone knew he was the dude.
And you can feel it in their acting that, they were formerly.
Yes. I never thought for a second he was an athlete prior. Carl Weathers.
He certainly had the physique, but and it also has to do with our age too, because he was a little, that his stardom in terms of football was a little just before our time. I mean, we were just kids, and we probably missed that peak for him.
Definitely, I did.
So we only know him, for the movies.
Yeah, just speaking of age for a little bit of a difference. So when I was a kid, Predator was one of the big movies for me. I maybe watched Predator more times than even the original Star Wars or Empire. I watched that thing so much. And so anytime I think Carl Weathers, I immediately think Dylan and him and Arnie, doing that little in the air, little arm wrestling there. So
that hand clasp, man, we can see it right now, can't you? That was You can see it.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I mean, you're talking about some definitive movie moment.
Yeah.
And some dude respect. That is a powerful moment. Yes.
And so I always think of that first. Of course, his stuff in Rocky is great, but yeah, Predator is kind of the peak for me. But growing up when I did in the aughts, it was also cool seeing him have that kind of comedic turn.
Yes.
I mean, he showed up in Happy Gilmore, a movie that maybe I don't go back too much anymore, but was a big deal back then. And even his little cameos in Arrested Development. That was
the best.
Yeah.
That was the best. And my friends who were millennials at the time when that show was more current, Arrested Development, like they didn't fully get the Carl Weathers like in jokes because he was like playing a caricature of himself, but like they didn't really know his work. My millennial friends at the time, so it was kind of like, yeah, I guess that guy's famous. I don't know.
Well, I was definitely charmed by that. And I did have some history with the movie that we're talking about tonight, Action Jackson. I did see this as well as a kid on TV, and I was always perplexed by it, which is one of the reasons I picked it for today.
Perplexed.
Save some of that for later.
You can talk about like it's 8.5.
Yeah, well, we'll discuss as we get to it. But.
Okay.
I find it fascinating. I'm sorry, I don't have a nostalgic story of my own to tell about Carl Weathers. I've never even really seen Predator.
Oh my goodness!
What?
Sacrilege!
What?
Oh my goodness! What are we doing?
What is
happening here?
I understand Die Hard, sort of, but what?
I saw it one time really quick, but like it was at a party or something, and I didn't really get a lot of it.
Oh my god!
But do you know why Sylvester Stallone gave him that role in Rocky?
Why is that?
Because he actually criticized Sylvester Stallone's acting. So Stallone was just kind of like, come on board. I'll show you some acting. And who got the Academy Award nomination.
Nice.
But,
well, as we all know, Sean is a huge Star Wars fan.
Oh, yeah, he's been in The Mandalorian. He was also in a... Eric, well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe y'all in The Heat of the Night, the TV show. He was a bit part in that in several episodes.
Oh, interesting.
I sound like I'm reading off a list, which I kind of am, but yeah. And let's not forget Chicago Justice, Chicago PD, and Chicago Fire.
Oh, is he in that franchise? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I did not even know that.
yeah. He played the same character in all three films, or all three shows.
Yeah.
Something Jeffries, Mr. Jeffries.
Mark.
Yeah, because that's all like one big universe, right?
It is a big universe. Yep. Mm-hmm. Of catastrophe.
My therapist watches him. She's like, "Oh, you should check it out." I'm okay. After I get through all of the RuPaul's Drag Race that I have to watch, but Carl Weathers. I have nothing else to say. I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay. Somebody pick it up. Grab the baton.
I mean, you started talking about The Mandalorian. I was going in order, but his career had these multiple stages, and from the 70s and the 80s, there was a very particular, kind of character that he played, a kind of vibe that he had. That again, very powerful, very, kind of serious, very respectful, very interesting that he did. And then, sometimes folks' careers start to wane. And it is a rare thing for stars, especially that had the heights that he had in the 80s, to come back at all. But he was able to come back during the 90s and the 2000s with these lighter kind of, like you said, caricatures, he's making fun of himself, but they were genuinely funny, and so to see him come back like that, it was nostalgic, and it showed us that he didn't take himself too seriously, and it was fun to see him doing that. And then again, he kind of disappeared for a while. And I mean, these gaps are like 8, 10 years. And so you always think, oh, yeah, we're not going to. It was great seeing him. That was Carl. And then he comes back again. What?
Oh,
Well, before we get to the next stage,
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking back on the character he played in Arrested Development, it's so funny because the caricature part of it was the whole point of his character and his cameos was that he was a washed up actor. And he was trying to offer classes to people trying to, get into the industry. But he really only had like one client. And that was the joke, that he's washed up, he's a has-been, like people don't remember him anymore. That was the thing. Like, who would have known that there was going to be the next stage that Carl's going to talk about?
Yeah. And again, actors are very sensitive to that kind of thing. You have to be okay to play a has-been. You have to be okay with yourself and what where you think you might be able to go to take on that role, because people start to associate you with your characters and maybe read a little too deeply into this kind of stuff. But no, he comes back with The Mandalorian, and first of all, we all know how great Mandalorian is. I mean, the series is just fun and it's interesting, and it brings together so much of what we miss about Star Wars, and it brings in this whole new at the time kind of a cowboy edge to it that was just so fresh and new. But every time he showed up from the beginning, we don't know what to make of him, right? Is he going to be another double-crossing Lando-like character? He was all set up to be that dude, again, where
100%.
Shifty kind of background. We don't know what his story is. Can we trust him? He's surrounding all the money. So every time I saw him on The Mandalorian, I wanted to see more about him. I really, his character and whatever he was up to, I genuinely wanted to know more about him every time I saw him on the screen. And where they went with his character was fun. They didn't make him dark, or they didn't, make him evil, or he didn't betray his friends. This dude was, doing his best to try to run a planet. He was trying to manage business. And when he got in trouble, he could pull that gun out and drop some pirates if he needed to. It was really, really fun to see him. And so I was really enjoying his comeback as this character. And of course, we all know he started directing episodes and stuff. So, once again, he's more than just, what you saw on the screen. So he's directing, and he's got some of these excellent, some of my favorite episodes of Mando he directed, the most action-packed ones. And so I was so excited to see him come back a third time, to come back again with dignity, with an interesting character, in front and behind the screen, but behind the camera. I was so excited to see where this was going to go. And so, yeah, when I got up and I saw that Hanako had messaged us, me, Eric, and the crew, that he had died, I couldn't believe it. It was just, it was a piece of my childhood. It was an old hero. It was a respected actor and director. And it was someone whose character I really, really was looking forward to seeing more of. And so all of that was really, really tough. It was tough.
Absolutely. I only have like 3 more little things to add. I don't know if anyone else has anything more. I will just say that also vicariously, by proxy, another thing that added to the myth, the legend of Carl Weathers is actually the extension of the Rocky series, the Creed movies. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he doesn't feature in the movies physically, but obviously it's the Creed name.
Yeah.
And there is, I think it's the second one, second Creed film, where, we get to visit his grave again, which we saw previously in the Rocky series. But at least we get to see the portrait on the tombstone. And that was, oh my gosh, you have no idea how much I teared up in the theater the first time I saw that. I just love tributes like that within a film franchise series, especially long running.
Yeah.
You feel the emotion of what's happening in universe in the movie in the moment, but then it just reminds you of the legacy of the character and the actor, who of course was still living at the time. And so that adds to this mystique of Carl Weathers to me. In the last two things I had in mind just to mention were that, look at Gina Carano's long tweet that she posted after his passing. Very touching. Yeah, that was a great tribute. And then look at the little television interview that Sylvester Stallone did after his passing. Both of those, the Gina Carano and the Sylvester Stallone, very moving, very fitting.
The thing that I remember about him in Rocky was, if you remember in the last chapter of the film when they do have the boxing match, Apollo Creed comes out, everybody's cheering for him, red, white, and blue. He's cock of the walk.
The James Brown moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's just all cover, like it is for a lot of the wrestlers. Well, at least when I was growing up. And but in reality, in that movie, Apollo Creed was actually this pretty humble guy who was just getting pushed around by his promoter and his manager, to box a newcomer instead of somebody seasoned. And he later on, it was Rocky Balboa, the movie Rocky Balboa, which was one of the Rocky sequels, of course. He wanted to use footage from the other films, and he had to ask permission of all the quote unquote villains. So Mr. T, he wanted to use footage of them, and he needed their permission. And Mr. T and Dolph Lundgren said yes. Carl Weathers said no, but I'll allow it if you give me a part in the movie. And Stallone was like, dude, you died. You're gone. I'm not going to do that. So they ended up using footage of some other guy that looked extremely like Carl Weathers. So that's when Weathers and Stallone had a spat, but then they ended up kissing and making up. And they shot some footage where Weathers would play himself in Creed, I think in flashbacks or something.
I don't remember ever seeing that, but I almost kind of wished they had done a scene like the way they sort of brought back like the ghost of Mickey in Rocky 5. But I don't know.
Wait, what?
Not the ghost of Data and Picard? I don't know.
No, the ghost of Mickey.
He comes back?
I don't want to spoil the movie. It's quite vivid.
Okay, well, it is Rocky 5 now.
Yeah. But it is like the best scene in Rocky 5, and that's the truth. No sarcasm.
One good one?
Huh?
I said the one good one, but that's me.
Oh, yeah. For a long in the early days when you could customize your message tones, I made my own little MP3 to download on my phone. Because during the ghost scene, it's one of Mickey's most iconic lines when he says like, "You remember when you're like down on the mat and you can't get up, just remember the sound of old Mickey. Get up, you son of a bitch!" And the get up, you son of a bitch.
That was actually pretty good, Burgess Meredith right there. That was bad.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That was my message ringtone. Like I would just be sitting there and be like, "Get up, you son of a bitch!"
That's not bad.
That's good. I guess the last final detail is pretty obvious, is that, when you see a dude like Carl Weathers, he seems to personify strength and health. And even when you see him running around in Mandalorian, you say, oh, he's getting up in age. Look at that dude. The real reason that this is such a shock is no one cares about the numerical age. Look at how that dude looked in The Mandalorian. Yeah. He does not look his age, nor did he look like he was in any way ill or sick. So, the remarkable thing about how he projected strength and vigor and health throughout his entire life. Even crazy Happy Gilmore, he's still with one hand, he's still, he's a strong dude. Where was it pastels in one hand, but still, he always had that look to him. And again, right, we've seen so many actors that at one time in their career, we've known them to be, big dudes and, athletic and whatnot. And then toward the end of their career, things change and we understand that there's a difference and we respect that, people change. Now, this dude, he was like big the whole time. And he never seemed to like lose, that being able to carry it well. So again, when you personify that health and that image and strength for your whole life, and then all of a sudden, no warning, this happens. It's
yeah. On the one hand, it feels tragic, but on the other hand, I forget his age at passing out. Was it like 76 or something?
Yes, that's correct.
Something like that. But as far as we know, from when I checked earlier, all we know is he just passed away in his sleep. Like, we're unaware if there was any illness or anything else like that. So on the one hand, while it is tragic because of what you just said, Carl, because he has always seemed so alive and fit and everything. And we feel this way like when the 27-year-old club, when their lives end, like I was gonna say Marilyn Monroe, not Marilyn Monroe, but
James Dean and all of that.
Yes, they got taken away in their youth, obviously, and we understand that. But he sort of has the best of both worlds because he lived a full life, but as you just said, he was as virile and cogent as ever, and he just went into sleep. I mean, you couldn't really ask for anything more.
Yeah. You got to go. That's the way to do it.
Any final words?
Nope.
All right. Well, I feel like I'm supposed to say something here. Well, here's to you, Carl Weathers. There'll never be another like you.
Why do they call you Action anyway?
Got to catch a cab. Now I got you.
He's a cop who carries no weapon.
This Jackson is so vicious, we don't even let him have a gun. Yeah!
He's a maverick who answers to no one.
You might pull that boy's arm off.
He had a spare.
He's a man who's no talk
I bet I can make you change your mind.
and all action.
How do you like your ribs?
The indefatigable Action Jackson.
The one big fella.
Some action.
You haven't learned your lesson?
Teach me.
You sure could teach Mr. T a thing or two.
So allow me to lay my healing hands upon you. What do you want from me? I want you to die. 1, 2, 3.
When it calls for action, he's the one to call.
If I was to hit you again, you'd probably slam my little body right through that wall. I was thinking about it.
Carl Weathers is Action Jackson, and action is on the way.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Action Jackson. So you might think, why are we doing Carl Weathers' most memorable film tonight? Well, actually, I was already kind of thinking it. So as I said, once I was reacting to the guys via messages about the passing of Mr. Weathers, I was already in my head. Oh, and I said, we should do like a tribute ProgNeg, which we've never done before. But I left it at that. But in my head, I was thinking, I want to watch Action Jackson, but I don't know if that's appropriate. I've never seen it before. I don't know. So it was actually Caleb who brought it up first in the thread. And so as soon as I saw that somebody else was validating what I was manifesting, I was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, for me, it was just thinking about something that he was the lead of. I couldn't really think of anything else. So this was what popped into my head first. Although I think I did say maybe this isn't the right pick for a tribute, considering it's, I don't know, maybe it has a better reputation than I think it should, but I don't think this is very well regarded amongst his filmography.
I'm really not sure personally. Again, I had never seen it before, but I know it has abysmal like critic scores, etc. But it was an extremely profitable movie. So like this is exactly the kind of movie you want to produce if you're a studio. You know, kind of like the formula for why horror movies have always been a big thing, you know, in terms of being produced, because the whole point is micro budget, hopefully big return. And this is exactly what this movie is for the action genre, especially for the time frame, the 80s. So I'm kind of curious. And also, I almost wish I had seen this other cult film so I could compare and contrast it, which is Cobra. Because Cobra, by Stallone, obviously, I have also not ever seen. But that has had a bit of resurgence in discussions I've heard, like in film podcasts and cult film podcasts for like the last 10 years. People talk about Cobra like it's just one of those so bad it's so good type of movies. So there's kind of this thing, this resurgence of Cobra fans or something, but I don't hear that about this movie. And now that I've seen this one, I really am curious to compare, especially when you hear more of my feelings about this particular movie.
Yeah, it was funny timing for this because a couple weeks ago I decided to revisit Beverly Hills Cop. It had been many years since I watched it. And after watching it, I was kind of like, oh, you know, where's the great black action heroes of the 80s? Where's the Stallone of the 80s? But I feel like there wasn't really that many. Maybe you guys, you know better than I do, but I don't really feel like there was very many black-led action films coming out during that period.
Yeah, not led. I can just think of side characters and like buddy characters.
I guess early 80s with a little...
Or they're paired with a white person, like Lethal Weapon. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 48 Hours.
Yeah. That was precisely the point of why Carl Weathers was such a big deal, because there weren't, you know, really black heroes. You had comedians.
Yeah, absolutely. Comedians.
You maybe had someone that portrayed a criminal, but just a flat out action hero that was a black dude. That it wasn't done at that time, really. Not by a major studio. There were some little side things, but not by a major studio. So when the idea of Action Jackson, we see how we do this, Action Jackson came out, the idea of it was so big and so prime for that time, because blaxploitation films, in the 70s, they were very popular, and they had a certain feel and they had a certain vibe to them that made them, like Eric was talking about, very profitable. They have a very important place in history. And when the genre died out in the late 70s, and there was just nothing else like that to replace it. So when you've got a character with a history, an actor with the history that Carl Weathers had, and that empty space where a black action hero, was needed, the idea of Action Jackson was perfect. It was and it was just at the right time to really take advantage of precisely the kind of things that you guys are asking about. And they were trying to position him this way with this movie. So that was the idea. And so one, Eric's talking about it had a minuscule budget. Shoot, it had a major budget compared to most other black-led films at the time.
Yeah, true.
Two, they were trying to target this, gap in the action hero space. So they gave the money and they gave the casting. Look at the casting in this movie.
It's insane.
Oh, yeah. Well, this was Joel Silver. This is like his whole troupe of people who would show up in his action films.
They had the idea and the force and the advertising behind it. There's a formula, and there is a set of things from that made blaxploitation films so popular. And they tried to lift some of that formula and put it into Action Jackson. So, okay, what is it? First of all, strong black lead. He can't be, some cartoony, little guy. He's got to be a big, strong lead and, popular with the ladies. 1. 2, you got to have music in your blaxploitation films. You got to have a strong soundtrack to really back things up. And you can see an edge of that in Beverly Hills Cop, right? As much as we love Eddie Murphy and as funny as it was, music was on point with Beverly Hills Cop. Like all of them. Soundtrack was a big deal. Yep. So again, they had, Vanity and the Pointer Sisters doing soundtrack for this. So you got the actors, you got the music, you got the strong black lead, you got the missing gap in, black action heroes. So everything was aligned for Action Jackson to be a big, big hit. And that they had strategically put it in that place. So that's where they were going with this.
And I want to say, too, it's funny to think about all these things and break them down now. And for me as a grown adult now, because at the time this film came out, I was 11 or 10, and I just saw the ads. I remember the ads coming on TV. And in my 10-year-old mind at the time, I wasn't even thinking anything about, first black action hero or anything like that. I just thought, just based on the TV spot, okay, I'm the target audience because I like these kind of movies. Just regular 80s action films. I'm in. And I'm like, it's Apollo Creed. Like, yeah, sign me up. And as a 10-year-old, the name of the movie just sounded perfect to my 10-year-old mind.
I remember that as well when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You got the title. I'm totally here for this. I just didn't get taken to the movies.
And what's great about that title is it pretty much sums up what they're trying to do. It's action featuring Jackson. Yeah.
I do have to mention about the title. I guess when I was young, I must have gotten taken to some sort of like collector toy store or something, and I saw some like classic Action Jackson figures.
Really?
And so for years, it wasn't until only maybe about a few months ago, and me and Isaac were putting together movies based on toy line series that I threw this in. I was like, oh yeah, of course, Action Jackson based on that toy line. And I looked it up. I was like, oh, no relation at all.
So it wasn't related?
For all these years, I assumed. Yeah.
That's funny, because I had just seen a random vintage ad reposted of like action figures for Over the Top that were tied to the movie, and I had never known they existed. Is
that based on a toy line? Over the Top?
Not based on. I think the toys were based on the movie.
Oh, okay. Damn. Yeah. I was like, I got to get to type and add that to my list.
So everything was all set up for Action Jackson to be a big hit in 1988 when it came out. I mean, you see, everything was right, on paper for what this movie was supposed to be.
Well, as far as the accountants were concerned in 1988, 89, it was a hit on paper too. So, mission accomplished. And I mean, this is something I was going to say after we talked about the movie more, but since I'm thinking about it, I have to say, not to reveal my hand too soon, I was very shocked after watching this movie that there wasn't more follow-ups with not Action Jackson maybe specifically, but with other studios ringing him up and having him feature in other projects. That's just my opinion.
I was going to ask about that. If it did so well, why not a sequel?
That's why I'm confused. And I was also very confused when I looked up the box office, because they knocked it out of the park for what they were trying to accomplish.
Mm.
So I don't know what happened. Like, I need to read like the Carl Weathers autobiography or something.
Well, all of this, Eric, you're looking at it from the financial standpoint.
True.
And it's true. It did make money, and it made proportional money.
Mm.
But again,
yeah.
But what we're doing is we are setting up a scenario where the environment is profitable and not necessarily the product. And when you watch Action Jackson, there's some issues. There's some issues with the movie.
Oh yeah. There's a couple.
And you're trying to figure out, you're asking these questions. Well, why was there no sequel, or why?
Oh no, not sequel, but another project, major project.
Well, I mean, but all it takes is a certain role and an actor, no matter how great they are, if the role does not showcase them appropriately, it falls on the shoulder of the actor. The actors get blamed for it, or at least there's a so they had created an environment for Carl Weathers to be this big black action hero. And when this movie came out, they wanted to see that on the screen. And so did the public. The public wanted to see that too.
Yeah, I also think it's worth noting that the action genre was just about to go through a big change with people like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal, whereas like the martial arts was coming back in. Mm-hmm. So maybe just the big gun-toting action stuff just wasn't quite where the action fans were at that time. I think it was right around this time when Bloodsport came out. And
well, you're right. There was definitely a shift that was about to happen for the genre, not just with those guys you mentioned, but even, like Schwarzenegger had obviously done he practically made the genre, him and Stallone, the action hero genre of the 80s. But then even in the 90s, or getting into the 90s, Schwarzenegger would pivot, start doing some like fun comedic roles, but then getting into the whole Cameron world of like sci-fi action blockbuster.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing that definitely, shifted for the genre going into the 90s. And it just, after I watched this movie, I just thought, man, Carl Weathers should have been somewhere in that mix of what happened with Seagal, or at least get a second, third run, after this. Who knows if it would have done better or been received better, whatever he could have done after Action Jackson. But, and maybe we need to actually talk about the movie, because so more of what I'm saying will make sense, because I didn't know what to expect, as I said. And because I had never really heard much about it, like it was one of those, there's so many movies that came out when I was a kid or in middle school, high school, that they had all the promotion and then they just like disappeared into the ether like so quickly. I wish I could think of another example besides Last Action Hero. That's one that comes to mind. Maybe Congo. I don't know. These movies that were like really built up and then they were like flash in the pan, gone. And Action Jackson was gone so quick from like, as far as I could tell, anyone's consciousness. And maybe it's because it didn't get replays on free TV, because I've started to realize as I revisit movies I've either seen or not seen from the 80s or even the 90s, that if whatever that movie was, regardless of how good it was or not, the way it gets stuck like in my nostalgia, and I think others of my generation, is did it get played over and over on free TV? Because one of the reasons Bloodsport is so near and dear to me is because I saw that dang thing like 18 times on free television. And, I think, and I never saw Action Jackson, not once, on free TV. And if it was in that rotation, I'm sure I would have this nostalgic love for it like I do for a bunch of other films.
There was, in a way, a follow-up to Action Jackson. It was 4 years later, and it was a movie called Hurricane Smith, in which he travels to Australia to rescue his sister, I think. Oh. And for what it's worth, the IMDb rating is, I don't know, because I can't find it on here. They moved it.
Hurricane Smith. Okay, that add that to the list. Hurricane Smith.
Oh, and there was a movie called Dangerous Passion that he was in, which is a mystery thriller, co-starring him and Billy D. Williams.
I have no idea what these projects are, but they, just based on the titles, they remind me of the straight-to-video stuff I would find at Blockbuster, and just wonder.
Okay, let's just jump right to that. There's I couldn't help watching this, just thinking like, wow, if this had come out maybe 3 years later, this would have absolutely felt, or been direct to video. Production values feel like that, especially when it comes to the score. I mean, this score just feels like paint by numbers, just hack stuff that you get in that department. It was so strange realizing this was a theatrical release. I hadn't known that until I was doing the research for it today.
Oh my goodness.
And I was, just a couple weeks ago, I watched Death Warrant by Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I was like, wow, the production values feel so similar between the two of these. And this was theatrical release. That's just crazy to me.
That's funny to me that you had that reaction, because I also noticed what you're talking about, but through my eyes, it was a positive, not a negative. Or what I mean is,
yeah,
I saw the same production values that you did, but I was surprised at how good it looked. So that's kind of weird.
Well, it's Joel Silver, so he's got the eye for that era, and he can put the scenes together like that. So it clearly felt, and especially if you look at stills, it really is pretty and strong, and the framing is good. So it's technically a well-made movie. Technically, it really looks good.
Correct. Well, actually, I remember now how I was thinking about it a little while ago when I was finishing the movie. So rather than describe it as like a straight-to-video type of film, what it really more reminded me of was this could have been a pilot for like a new action cop television series, except with a ridiculously over-the-top budget for television. Like, because all the beats of it and like what we were seeing and what was happening felt so much like an 80s cop drama, whatever.
Well, it is definitely the 80s, but it still feels theatrical. It does.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like if you made a TV movie, but like real movie based on a TV series pilot.
All right. Well, I don't know.
Oh, okay. If there was a such thing, you know how, when HBO and the other services started making their own content, if that television model existed in its more modern form, like when you got things like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, if that model was already an established thing in the 80s, this would have been like an HBO new primetime drama with like HBO money. You know what I'm saying? If you transpose the modern golden age of television and pretend it existed in the 80s,
dude,
I feel like they produced something like
87, 88. You can't go projecting that far back with the things.
I'm saying if there was an established golden age of like premium cable television shows,
oh come on,
that's what this would be.
And we had a time machine that will go back. All right, look, I agree. It had a standard kind of cop show feel. But it did not look like that, and the way it was put together, it was not like Serial. They were trying to make a series of movies, but it was not as quite as small as TV. But all right, so
I'm not trying to downgrade it by comparing to television. I'm trying to say it looked like if we had premium television in the 80s, if such a thing existed, that's what this reminded me of.
All right, well,
just out of curiosity for you guys, did you guys see an HD copy?
Absolutely,
because maybe it's just my old DVD maybe just looks more like direct video.
Oh, absolutely. I watched it in HD. I could see the grain and everything.
I did too. Yeah.
So maybe that makes a difference because, what I'm looking at is just, not.
Oh, that's probably what it is.
Are you at least watching it in theatrical aspect ratio? There was one on DVD that was 4:3, and I was like, no. But I got one that is actually movie aspect ratio. So make sure you saw it. But okay, so all right, so we're tap dancing around some stuff here. Let's just
we sure are.
It's not my favorite Carl Weathers film. I'll tell you that right now. It is not. What I was trying to set up is the reason why it was on paper successful. I mean, everything was lined up for this movie to really be a hit and to begin something new and different. But then when you sit down and you start to watch it, there are some issues. Now, I kind of hinted at it before. You watch normal blaxploitation films; they have certain rhythms, they have certain beat to them, they have certain expected things in them. It's just the nature of them. And when they were trying to update it and bring it into the late '80s with this, a lot of the things that people expected in a blaxploitation film was here in this movie. But then they went in some directions that I believe disappointed a lot of the audience. One of the things is the weird comedy that is mixed into it.
Yes.
Now, if you're going to do blaxploitation, strong black dude hero in it, he's got to be strong, serious, and it, not all the time. His situation or circumstances can be comedic, but he can't be, trying to be funny in it. He's got this thing, and it's a rep he's trying to protect, and he's trying to maintain this thing. And between Carl Weathers, who we know can be funny, that's not the point at all. He could have, if it had been created in a different way, he could have pulled off some comedy in this. But when you go into it, you don't know that that's what's happening. And so there's this weird where, he's serious and he's going through some stuff and he's trying to deal with things. And then there's a corny, hammy, supposedly funny line in there. And then they pull back and, it's drugs and, murder. And then there's this hammy line that's in there. So this push and pull in terms of us trying to get to know him as a character is unsettling. That whole scene with the pickpocket, the purse snatcher, that how he reacts when he sees Action Jack, how they set him up, wait till you meet Action Jackson. You don't have to do all of that if the character is clearly, strongly, well defined. You see it, you don't set it up the way they do, and then the follow through with how that the purse snatcher encounters Action Jackson repeatedly throughout the film. It's not fulfilling. It messes with the strength of what the character is supposed to be. So this unevenness of, is it dark Miami Vice, Shaft, Heroes, or is it slapsticky comedy? Is it trying to be 48 Hours? You can't lock you into that while you're watching it, and it keeps going back and forth in a way that's not natural. And so that is one of the things that's frustrating about this, because you want it to be something, and it's got you see the potential, but that going back and forth is a little it's distracting when you try to watch it and you don't know where you're supposed to be. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? I mean,
no doubt.
Carl, I'm so glad you brought that up, because, I think I already kind of had the idea, and then you just kind of jogged my mind a little bit more on it, because even though this was the first big black action lead film, of course, people had already seen Beverly Hills Cop. They'd already seen the first Lethal Weapon, a bunch of Richard Pryor films, and people, Ghostbusters even, you're just expecting that movie blockbuster humor that was normal at the time. And this movie ain't it when it comes to that department. And I mean, I'm sure they felt the pressure of the standard that had already been set. It kind of reminds me of, in more modern times, where films like the first Guardians of the Galaxy kind of set this new standard of sarcastic dialogue, and maybe the first Avengers movie as well. And some movies tried to emulate that, and some kind of did a little bit, but we all know there's plenty of other blockbuster summer movies, some that were Disney, some that were not, that they keep trying to do that Guardians of the Galaxy, Joss Whedon, funny, quippy dialogue, and so this is like the older equivalent of that, of someone trying to keep up with the times or the standard and really failing really badly. Now, for me watching the movie now, a lot of the stilted dialogue and really corny humor. It worked for me in a so bad it's funny type of way. Watching it today,
Yeah.
I don't know what it would have been like if I was an adult back in the day. And then what struck me too is that there was maybe 3 one-liners that were actually okay. So those jumped out at me. I wish I had written down which ones I actually liked, but by and large, it was very strange. And then, like, at one point, because I'm thinking, okay, whoever wrote this screenplay obviously doesn't know how to write dialogue and probably doesn't have a lot of practice at this. But then at one point, who was the character who said defenestration? And I was like, where did they pull that out of the thesaurus? Like,
Are you talking about D, the advice giving barber?
Could have been. You mean Ghost Dog before Ghost Dog? But I'm glad you brought him up too. I don't personally recognize him, but he has some nice credits where he's appeared as background characters. That actor.
He's got a definitive voice, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm just glad you brought that up, Carl, because that, of course, is one of the worst aspects of the movie. Didn't really bother me in 2024, but I know I'm probably a little bit unique in that way.
Oh, it was. Also, I was cursing as much as I love James Bond, the movies, for introducing that kind of quippy humor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 20 years later, oh boy, had it devolved. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was really ruining them by this point, but this movie was just like the pinnacle of, oh man, you're taking it too far. I mean, maybe Roger Moore, I don't know. His quips were pretty terrible too in the 80s, but
yeah, but they were still funny in the 80s. Again, I was a kid, but so I don't know for sure. But if anything made this movie look low budget or amateurish, more than the technical aspects for me.
Wait. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm going to interrupt you because you're going to talk about low budget, not a lot of experience. You mentioned the writing a few minutes ago.
Right. That's what I'm still talking about, but yeah.
I'm so sorry. Okay. I was just going to say this is written by a guy named Robert Renault, and he has 3 other writing credits, and they're bizarre. There's an episode of Tales from the Crypt, which I don't know which episode because I'm on IMDb. But The Man Who Was Death. Oh, he wrote the very first episode of Tales from the Crypt. Also, he wrote The Hitchhiker. Oh. No, I'm sorry. There was a TV series in 1987 called The Hitchhiker, based on the movie. Never mind. I thought
Wait, based on that movie from the 80s? They made a TV series of that, The Hitchhiker?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then they remade it in the 2000s by my house, actually. And then he wrote a movie called Demolition Man, which you all may remember. Yeah.
You mean the actual movie Demolition Man?
Yeah, the actual movie.
He wrote that?
Yeah, screenplay and story.
There had to be. He had to have assistance with, like, Demolition Man. With, like, I mean, just the dialogue. Like, maybe he wrote the story or something.
Well, I mean, I can cut him some slack. It's like, 6-7 years later, but still, it's got a hammy edge to it that I recognize. But this is, this is his first try, or this is not what we saw in Demolition.
He co-wrote it. Story and screenplay co-wrote with 3 other people.
Demolition Man?
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Because I feel the hamminess. So, but go on, Eric. Go on.
Oh no, that's it. That's what I had to say about that.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been dancing around maybe the I don't know what to call her at this point, but maybe the biggest detractor, and the one that when I would see this as a kid, I would be like, this feels weird. I sometimes I'll see movies where the acting is kind of weird, but this is another level. And it started a lifelong curiosity with me with Vanity, just the overall bizarreness of her performance here.
Okay. Well, I'm actually glad you brought this up because you reminded me of something else I was going to say in response to Carl, because I made those other mainstream examples of funny action movies of the 80s, But another notable movie, and I started thinking about it when Carl was talking about black action hero in the 80s, and I remembered, of course, The Last Dragon.
Yeah.
But specifically, since we're talking about like dialogue and whatnot, that movie's pretty snappy in a good way. At least, I don't know how much nostalgia plays into my memories, and I've watched it recently.
That is a straight up cult hit.
Yeah, exactly. So that movie has always had definite cult status, like almost right out the gate. Like all my friends, we love that movie. Watching it on free TV, and who's the greatest? Sure enough, and everything else. And that movie just like, it gets the mixture right. Like you can have all the right ingredients to make the cake, but if you don't. If everything isn't measured properly and given the right amount of time to rise and get kneaded, it comes out wrong. And obviously Action Jackson came out wrong. And then, so carrying on from what Caleb just brought up, I understand, but as much as I love The Last Dragon, I actually found Vanity's performance to be better in this movie than The Last Dragon, because of course she's gorgeous in this and The Last Dragon. Oh my God, she was like a super crush in The Last Dragon. But the only thing I don't really like about that movie is her acting in The Last Dragon. So I actually thought this was a modicum of a step up, because I was a little bit fearing the worst because I recognized her name. And I thought it was better. It wasn't good, but it was better.
She's dead too, by the way.
Yes. I remember when she passed.
Well, certainly coming in having no clue who she was and being used to, leading ladies in these kind of movies, being able to be at some level of acting, maybe not in the James Bond movies in the 80s. Some of those were horrible as well. But it was still like, oh, this is a squeaky wheel that's making this movie stand out and feel just off. It was one of the things that definitely made this stand out in my memory, seeing it as maybe like one time on TV. Anytime I saw her name later on, I was like, oh yeah, Vanity. She was that crazy chick from Action Jackson. So
I think we should blame Canada and Prince for Caleb's disappointment.
Yeah, and to be fair, maybe her best performance I've ever seen is she was in this little movie before Prince discovered her called A Terror Train. She's not really good in that either, but she doesn't stand out terribly like that.
Wait, Terror Train with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, she's in that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
Before she was Vanity.
And David Copperfield.
And, I kind of expected Vanity because, of course, she's featured prominently on the poster and on the cover. But what I didn't realize, depending on what version or where you found the movie, I didn't realize in the icon for the film, because there's a face in the background. I had no idea who that face was going to be until I started watching the movie. And Sharon Stone's in this as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my Lord. I was such a fan of Sharon Stone. I didn't know who she was until Total Recall. But then all the stuff she did in the 90s, I was a fan of. And I went back and, saw King Solomon's Mines. And I love that movie just for her. And now to see another like little hidden gem from her filmography, I was happy until she was snuffed out so quickly, like Robert Davi, who is another actor who I adore, especially in his 80s and 90s work, because he usually hams things up as a mustache twirling villain, which I can just watch all day. Or he's the super nasty police captain. And I was like, yes, Sharon Stone, Robert Davi, dead. Damn it. I think they just only had him on contract for like 48 hours or something to shoot their scenes. Devastating.
Yeah, Davi had to run off to shoot License to Kill the next year.
Hell yeah. That's when I first learned about him, and I freaking love him in that.
Yeah, he's great in that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I never remember that Sharon Stone's a part of this.
And she didn't really break out until, I may be wrong here, with Basic Instinct a few years later.
Total Recall.
Oh, that's right. You just said that, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah, that was her breakout role.
And that was in what year?
90?
90?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is before that. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that was her breakout, and then the movie you mentioned took her to the stratosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I said before I got on my soapbox, Robert Davi, you gotta listen to him like in some sit down podcast interview or something like that, because no matter what role he's speaking of from his past, even his like more B film or, you know, whatever you want to call it, like his less, whatever, those roles, no matter what he's speaking about with his past work, he talks about like the way he talks about his previous roles and work, it's like all his films were like works of Shakespeare. And so he just gets so serious and so, you know, let me explain my process. And, you know, I was really contemplating, you know, the soul of this man. And it doesn't matter how schlocky the role was. He just sounds like he's Patrick Stewart, like describing like his acting. He's a character in of himself.
Well, he's serious
in
his roles. Whatever he does, he brings you know, a gravitas to it for sure. So
100%. It doesn't matter if you're like, hey, we're just shooting this for YouTube. Yeah. I understand.
Yes. What's my motivation? I need to get into play for it.
He's super serious, and it's kind of fun to watch because again, he's like a character of himself when he's interviewed in real life. He takes himself very seriously.
Yeah, another piece that feels distracting and just a bit strange in this flick is Craig T. Nelson as the villain. In particular, anytime we see him doing kung fu, and it's just like, oh my god.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. I thought he was Jim Belushi at first. And I was like, oh my god, Jim Belushi's in this, coach? I was like, no way.
Wait, I you know, he does kung fu, and I have to apologize. This is very unprofessional of me. I have not watched the film. That's why I'm providing like fun facts that I'm looking up on the internet as
you gotta watch it, Sean.
I know. I actually kind of want to watch it now after hearing y'all talk.
For you, you gotta watch it.
I know.
Yeah, he was here for the tribute.
But I just, in the meantime, I have my mom literally just text me, have you watched all the Oscar-nominated movies on Netflix? I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Have you watched this? Have you watched that? Everybody's like, you've got to watch it! I'm watching True Detective Night Country, by the way. But where was I? Oh, Craig T. Nelson, martial arts. So Craig T. Nelson actually does kung fu or some such martial art in this because I cannot. I'm picturing like I know Craig T. Nelson from Coach, and he's only a little bit older to me in my mind than Craig T. Nelson from Poltergeist. And either way, he ain't no martial arts guy.
Well, he still looks good for his age in 1988. But I think what they did production-wise for the action scenes was maybe like a little Christopher Lee Count Dooku. And not CGI, obviously, but it's clever editing.
I don't know about clever.
I was about to say, I agree. Clever would not be the term I would use.
It was good enough for me. I knew he wasn't really doing what I was seeing, but...
Oh, I was laughing. Every time.
Oh, wow.
I'm not even talking about the physical aspect. I'm talking about just Craig T. Nelson being a villain. That actor, I just can't see him. But then again, I could never imagine John Goodman as a villain until, you watch 10 Cloverfield Lane. So
I was going to say, he's perfect in that. But he's kind of like playing a character who's sort of like if Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3 was like a little bit toned down and less cartoonish and an older, mature middle-aged man. That's kind of how he is.
For some reason, I was thinking Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill.
Oh, that's over the top again.
I feel like he's over the top here.
Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill is playing Johnny Depp playing Willy Wonka.
But it doesn't matter because it's Christopher Walken. He can always be a villain. Doesn't matter how weird.
I agree.
I'm at my best in the saddle. That's not very good.
No, I agree with you, Carl. I'm picturing Sean picturing the dad from Poltergeist being Christopher Walken, and no, that's not what happened.
I am merely backing up Caleb's point, which is I might have chosen a different villain, a different actor to be the villain here because
it should have been Robert Davi.
Well, that probably would have made more sense. That really would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Because at the height, at the pinnacle moment of this film, there's a fist-to-fist battle between Carl Weathers and Craig T. Nelson. Now, I mean, you see, I just said it, you all are laughing. I mean,
it tickled me, though, in a good way.
Well, I'm glad it tickled you in a good way. I was like, this is ridiculous. Because it's supposed to be, the high point of the film.
Yeah, true.
And, there were many missed opportunities in this movie. But when you get to the point where the arch villain meets the hero, there's got to be something special there. There's got to be, I don't know, you want to call it a chemistry, or there's got to have a sufficient emotional investment. There's got to be something in that moment. And when I see Carl Weathers and Craig T. Nelson throwing each other around a bedroom, I'm just like, yeah, I see where they saved their money. I see where the money, was not present for this.
Yeah, and it's even more dumb because they got Ali Wong in there. He's running around as like the bodyguard. Does he even have a big kung fu scene with Carl Weathers?
He pulls the dude off of Craig T. Nelson. That's not it. He watches, I believe.
Yeah, that's the other thing you might notice, Sean, if you watch this, or other people who haven't seen this movie before. Besides the actors whose names you recognize
and faces,
there's a who's who. Yeah, there's a who's who of 80s stunt performers and other background character actors that have very small roles, but they're littered throughout this movie.
The one that Caleb just mentioned, Ali Long, I know he's been in a lot of stuff. And I just tried to IMDb him, and I misspelled his name, I think, because the first thing that came up was the movie All Night Long with Gene Hackman.
Who knows?
But I just saw him in Death Warrant too. He was in that Van Damme movie, and he also had like a very brief action scene. I was like, oh, what a waste.
Yeah, God, he's such an iconic face. I'm glad I pivoted towards stunt performance for a second, because it reminds me of another aspect of the movie that stood out. So the director, Craig R. Baxley, he was known, like, this is, I believe, the one and only major motion picture he ever directed.
Really?
But prior to this, he was a well-known stunt coordinator on television mostly, and like the A-Team and a bunch of other things you'd recognize. So he had a background as a stunt coordinator. So I think that's part of the reason why, we see all these recognizable stunt actor faces, but then this is the other thing that I thought it was funny, unintentionally really funny and entertaining about this movie. So, the movie feels like, like a mid-budget cop movie, whatever. But whenever someone gets killed, or especially if there's fire or an explosion involved, holy moly, that's where the budget went.
Yes.
Because it was way over it was cool, way over the top. Like, but it so stood out, and it just made me laugh, and it also made me feel warm inside.
It's Joel Silver. When he does things, he's got that, the early huge action vibe to him. He's got the big explosions. He's got the people falling out of buildings. He's got that kind of thing going on. So again, when you watch Action Jackson, it has this unevenness because you see low budget dialogue, sort of interesting, acting going on, small scenes, then giant missiles shooting through a dude, guy on fire falling 20 stories, a cab with a giant explosion going on, and it's just, again, there's no gentle transition between these things.
It was so great. You know what it reminds me of? That old skit in the 90s on SNL. I think it was the one where the cat was driving the car or something.
Toonses,
the driving cat.
And then, they'd be driving, and then, oh, look out! And then they drive off the cliff, and then, like, before, like, every commercial break, they keep, like, going back to the car like it's Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, That's why this movie was unintentionally funny, because I started to like, oh man, you got to drink or something every time there's a wild death or explosion.
Yeah, no,
they are so premium over the top.
See, this is you're absolutely right. Toots is a hilarious example. But see, this is the issue, and this is the problem with the film. Do you see how all of the pieces for a classic action 80s film are there? I mean, the casting, the music, the effects, the stunt effects budget, all of that stuff is there. But it was the writing, and it was how the stuff, and the other issue, and I was kind of putting this toward the end, but not one really unique thing happens in Action Jackson. Everything that we see, we've seen before. And I don't mean like once before. Everything that we see here. So it feels a little too safe and a little too, cookie cutter. It is literally everything that we have seen before, just kind of glued together, and not necessarily in a very smooth way. So with all of that, this is what happened. Eric, you're going, well, I don't understand why Carl Weathers didn't, get more opportunities after. He didn't have the material in this to really shine. And there was a whole lot of expectation and a whole lot of pressure and a whole lot of budget wrapped around the idea of what this movie was supposed to have been. And then when you sit down and then you watch it and you feel this unevenness, you see all, the derivative nature of so much of the stuff that was there.
Everything you're saying is correct, of course. But I feel like if I was like a movie producer in the 80s, which I would never be, I mean, they would never choose me. I mean, I'd do it. They'd never choose me.
Also, you would have been 10, but okay.
That's a whole other story. I think we could turn this into a sitcom if it was 19.
There you go.
But I feel like if
it'll air after Mr. Smith, the talking ape in Washington.
I feel like if I was adult me now, and I was a movie producer exec in the 1980s, I would watch this movie. I would be 100% aware of all the issues that Carl brought up.
Okay,
but I can see, this is how I feel watching it now. I can see the issues, but Carl Weathers is not the problem, obviously.
Nope.
And I see like we're right there. Like we're right there to really breaking down the door of going to the next level for his career. And I just feel like if I was a producer, I'd go, yes, this movie didn't quite work, but I can use this guy, and like I would give it another shot, another roll.
Well, that's what Hurricane Smith was all about. The Australians saw this film and they're like, let's put him in one of our films. Thus, he became Hurricane Smith. By the way, on the poster for Hurricane Smith, we see Carl Weathers with a huge gun and some girl, and the tagline is, "He'll blow you away."
Okay.
Sounds good.
Because he's a hurricane.
And again, of course, Carl is absolutely right. Like all the pieces are there, right? They're just not coming together. Like, and then I start having this feeling now. What I need now in 2024 is some new trailblazing young maverick director. Is Ari Aster the guy who made X and Pearl?
No, you don't want him to do this.
No, I didn't say I want him, but it's
Ty West is the guy.
Sorry, Ty West. Ty West. Okay, I'm not saying get Ty West, but what I'm saying is we need a person who's like Ty West is for the horror genre today, like sort of like calling back to like the older era. We need a Ty West who's focused on 80s action and bringing it back to modern times. Because if someone did a remake of Action Jackson set in the time period of the 80s, but they had the eye and the understanding of Ty West for 80s action, that movie would be absolutely incredible. A24, get on this right now.
Well, wait. I have a question. In what movie does Ty West have an idea of 80s action that he reflected?
No, he was saying if there was an equivalent.
Yeah, because Ty West is the bringing back retro horror guy. I need the equivalent for action, 80s action, and that young guy to come in and
No,
do
no.
the remake of Action Jackson, I think it would be absolutely incredible.
I can't. There's just nothing really here. Even the Action Jackson character, I can never tell. Is he supposed to be like a super cop? Like we have the scene when he jumps onto the cab and he punches through the window, and it doesn't even seem to.
Well, that's how he got his nickname, don't you know?
And then he begs the car to run him over, and then he leaps over it into the air. And I was like, okay, that's no human. No human could do that. So
That was good though. So
no, it's terrible.
Action Jackson got his nickname because yes, he can do these amazing physical feats. Like he's almost a superhero, like Luke Cage or something. But he was a very respected police lieutenant, Harvard educated,
Harvard graduate. Yeah, that was on the Wikipedia
yeah,
page.
crazy. So he's supposed to be like intellectual and like a really good cop, but then he decided to play by his own rules to catch the one guy and his son.
I feel like if you want to modernize this, because you were talking about, I feel
Yeah.
like Quentin Tarantino would have a
Yes, but it would have too much Tarantino flavor, and that's not what I'm going for.
okay.
There's so many better movies to do this with. There's just not enough here, I don't think. I'm curious for you, Carl. Have you ever seen a movie called Cleopatra Jones?
Of course.
I kept thinking of the equivalent. I was like, this kind of feels like it's in that vibe, but just not getting
No,
there.
this is what I'm talking about. It's true. Blaxploitation has a feel to it that's very popular. In a lot of ways, it is very rewarding. But remember the era, right? They were popular for a window of time, and then support died out for them. Not saying that it was bad genre, not saying that it wasn't entertaining. It's just the support for them dwindled away. So yes,
Yeah.
I mean, Superfly, Shaft, Cleopatra Jones, Fox
Coffee.
Brown, all Coffee. They all, have. Okay, so again,
Live and Let Die.
which one?
That doesn't count. No, sir.
Yeah.
Psh.
The blaxploitation James Bond film that was capitalizing on the craze.
Okay, that's true.
Well, yeah, but it was. Yeah, that was a caricature of blaxploitation. So,
Yes.
but
That's interesting. A
But,
caricature.
yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah, I know. That's just interesting.
But the idea is, the elements are very popular. So if you just get the flow right, if you just get the flow right, you can make low budget, quality, exciting, really viscerally fun films. And that's what they were going for. But there is a feel and a sincerity that you have to adhere to if you want it to viscerally punch. And they pulled their punches with Action Jackson, between the comedy, between the choice of villain, all of that stuff. It was almost there, but it does not fulfill the baseline requirements of what you need in a blaxploitation film, and that's where it failed.
Yeah, and oh god, they were so close.
They were.
Because like the things that someone else could have done, like in the early parts of the movie, they're offing all these. I can't remember what they were. In my head, I just thought of them as Teamsters.
The Invisible Men.
And incidentally, they stuck with the cliche of one of your henchmen must look like Huey Lewis. So well done with that. I mean, everyone, they managed to do that, pull that. One of your henchmen has got to look like Huey Lewis for some reason. I don't know why. So.
Yeah, and so they're offing. I don't know. I'm just gonna call them Teamsters. I don't even remember what they were.
No, I think they're called the Invisible Men.
Well, no, he's talking about who the victims were. But
yeah, those were the killers or the assassins. Were the Invisible Men.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. These are the henchmen. All right.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Like the soup, and just the concept when they explain who these Invisible Men are, it so reminded me of Fox Force 5 from Pulp Fiction, or like
you mean
Snake
Kill Bill?
Crew.
Oh no! Oh, you mean Uma Thurman? Okay, all right.
Yeah, they talk about it in Pulp Fiction, and then basically Kill Bill is sort of like the realization of it. So the way they talk about how these guys were just trained to be like these like incredible assassins, but then they got paid by someone else to kill their own creator or whatever, and they're like these weird comic book like they kind of remind me of the Terminator in the original Terminator, except they're obviously not cyborgs. They're just supposed to be like Dolph Lundgren types, I guess, is what they were going for. But they're like really cheap versions of Dolph Lundgren. Anyway, they're like weirdly cartoonish and remind me, Caleb, of that whatever Godzilla movie was like a ripoff of Terminator. Like, these guys look like they're Caucasian Westerners who show up like in Japanese language films. This is what these guys look like. But anyway, so those guys, those Teamsters or whatever they are, who get killed in the early parts of the movie, they all have like these crazy over the top comical deaths. And again, with a different director, writer, etc., those could have been done so well and they would have been so entertaining. And then later we had the whole trope of like the motel owner who somehow knows everything in the neighborhood, but he's like a character in and of himself. And then I guess they realized they only had like 25 more minutes of film left. So like Jackson goes to like the what was it called? The duck place. And like that whole weird sequence with the testicles in the jar and like that whole thing. And it's a cold lead because the guy's dead, obviously. And then of course the hotel guy is just like, oh, just go down to the barber shop. Oh, obviously. And then this character who looks like she just stepped off the set of 227, like just like shows up out of nowhere, and she's like the Deus Ex Machina. She's like the what's the lady, the Oracle or whatever in the Matrix.
Yeah. She's Exposition D is who you're talking about. Yeah.
She's like
she rhymes, and she's everything starts with a D. Is what she says. So her rhyme. All her words started with the D, and she gives away all of the secrets and all the behind the scenes because that's.
But in this movie, it's bad. But in something that was put together well, like on The Last Dragon, all of this on paper could have been amazingly fun and entertaining.
Yeah,
it just wasn't in the final product.
You guys ever watched Adventures in Wonderland? That I think it was '80s Alice in Wonderland show. The Red Queen. Immediately once I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that show in years.
And well, let's not forget the car chase up the stairs. So, that's something you don't see just everywhere.
See, I want to see the
driving the SUX 3000 up the stairs was just.
I was thinking that.
I mean, that was pretty epic there.
I love the things that you guys are saying about this movie. This sounds like a really good cult movie. Is it fair to call it that?
No,
it's not quite there.
No,
it's not quite there.
Yeah, it's like right on the borderline. Like I said, Cobra achieved cult status in recent.
Oh, that's right. But I'm actually surprised that somebody like Shout Factory or Arrow haven't picked this up.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Gave it a polished release.
Yeah, come on, Vinegar Syndrome, get on it.
I'll say, despite all the stuff that we've been saying about the movie, I still feel like it could have been just maybe like 10% better had they just gotten someone else to make this score. It is such a dead, empty score.
I have to go back to the score.
Herbie Hancock's score, I must say.
I have to go back to the score because I didn't notice. I was more bothered by the musical numbers, and apparently one was like a modest hit.
Wait a minute, hold on. There are musical numbers in this.
Vanity is a performer, and so they're going to leverage her as a nightclub performer.
Okay.
Not only that, but Sean, I'm not talking about a musical like Broadway. I'm talking about, remember all the 80s movies, like music featured heavily in some kind of way, like in Flashdance, but I mean not just in the soundtrack.
Okay.
I mean, like it's included into like diegetically into the movie, or like The Love Boat when they always had a musical guest. Like it's that kind of thing.
Okay. A question about Vanity. Do you think that she deserved a nomination for a Raspberry for Worst Actress?
It's a raspy.
Hey?
In general, or in this film specifically?
In this film specifically, because she got a nomination for a Razzie for this.
Yeah,
she did not win.
I mean, obviously, Caleb agrees.
Yes,
her acting ability is noticeable.
Noticeable in a good way, or
that was very diplomatic.
Mr. Captain Neutral Jones.
Again, she had a worse performance in The Last Dragon. She had
It worked better.
had some acting lessons.
Wow. Okay.
The tone of it worked better in The Last Dragon.
I'm agreeing with Caleb too. I think she did better in The Last Dragon.
Well, okay, here's the problem though. This is why she comes off better in The Last Dragon. Because in The Last Dragon, she was the not quirky, but she was like she was the hot damsel in distress, and she was like super cute and bubbly and nice, that she was like cool with Bruce Leroy. But in this movie, she's like the dazzling cabaret singer who's also a heroin addict. Wah, wah. So like her character's like out of Rent, and in this movie, and so that doesn't do her any favors at all, because that's not really her thing.
Now, by the way, I just need to ask this. Just a random question here. I'm not one that does the drugs, but is the needle supposed to be that big? I mean, the syringe.
I'm pretty sure somebody swiped that off the set of the 1980s Little Shop of Horrors. I'm pretty sure
that when she pulls out her needle, I'm looking at that thing. It looked like something you would milk a cow with. It was just huge.
Yeah. To me, it looked like one of those, like seriously, like the old-fashioned dental, like Novocaine injection.
And I always get kind of insulted the way, I don't think this is true any longer, but the way that movies treat heroin, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do some heroin, and then I'm going to go out and do a musical number. I'm not saying she did this.
Actually, no, she did a musical number in between.
Okay, see, that's not. It's supposed. They say it's heroin, but that's not heroin. That's not what heroin does. It's like you need 3 hours or something like that.
She had a little number called "Undress Me," and during the whole scene when she's doing it, she had this transparent shirt, and
it was hot.
It sounds horrible, and I have to see it.
Well, that was one of the high points in the film.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I was playing video game pinball for a little bit while I was watching the movie, and then my ball went down the hole, and I looked. And then she was just naked on the bed, and I was like, "What am I doing right now with my life? Like, I need not to be playing video games while watching." This
Finally, when he was playing this round of video pinball, he realized, "What am I doing with my?"
Now, so
I should be watching this classic.
The pieces of the film again, just to keep reiterating, all the pieces. Now, to reinforce this, though, and we've seen this before, but the music video for the song that the Pointer Sisters sing, that's one of the signature songs in the background here. It's called I think it's "He Turned Me Out." If you watch the music video, what they do is, like they do with most music videos from the 80s, they cut in parts of the movie to fill out the video. Yeah. The music video for this came out before the movie. It was part of the ad campaign that, the way they would do it back in the day.
Uh-huh.
If you watch the music video for this,
I hated that. Yeah.
This looks like an exciting, fast-paced, over the top 80s film. And so it's, again, you see when you take the pieces and you reassemble them, or you don't have that kind of silly or, mediocre dialogue in between. The pieces really were there. And you watch the music video and you're like, man, this is a movie I want to see. And then from that, you sit down and you watch it and you're like, something is not right.
Well, that is an art, taking a movie and basically putting together a preview that is going to make people really want to see it.
And that's expected. Yeah, but the difference between that and what you actually get, it can be rather significant. And, and you're seeing the exact same things. This is actually in the movie, but then when you see it, Yeah,
you're reminding me, Carl, of like in the late 90s, where for both of these movies I'm about to mention, I saw the music video first, and then I was like, I gotta see the movie. And, first it's like, here come the men in black. Galaxy Defenders versus Wild Wild West.
Oh, no.
Wild Wild West.
West. Yeah.
And based
like
off
Wild
both
West.
music videos, I wanted to watch both movies.
One was fulfilling, one was not. But again, they had the budget.
I just have a couple more bits I wanted to call out. One of the ones is so he goes to this bar and the bartender, I guess, arrests him, or I don't know what to call that, apprehends him. And we go in the back and we get to see another guy who shows up in a ton of direct-to-video stuff. I'm always happy to see him. Miguel Nunez Jr.
Yeah.
He's super over the top. He's kooky as hell in that scene. But then we get Carl Weathers. Vanity jumps in. She's like, "Oh, don't you know he's a bit slow. He's a bit special in his way, and he's obsessed with God. So you should leave him alone." And Carl Weathers goes into his preacher routine, and they start playing that weird like music in the background, like his revival music. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so terrible." I was laughing.
I thought it was so funny. It was so dumb, but it was so funny. This was one of the corny parts I really liked. It was so absurd.
Oh, it was so gone. It was absurd.
So when I was saying there is an inconsistency in theme, that would be.
But it was good.
Eric, you are having a great time with this film, and you know what? I'm so glad.
And this discussion.
I'm glad that you were having fun here.
I'm watching the video right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not only do they show clips of the movie, they shot special interstitials with Carl Weathers and Vanity and the Pointer Sisters, like made for the music video, like with the production of like a Michael Jackson video. I mean, the production values. This is a hot video.
I told you. I know.
This is good. It has like a Beat It vibe to the music video.
I know. This is part of, the expectation going in. So you're saying the movie was profitable, but you got to think about over how long.
Right, of course.
The first weekend, there was a big, there was a huge ad campaign for it because, again, it was fulfilling a need, an obvious absence in the action movie genre. And with all these names, all this music, big ad campaign, everything was in place for this to be a big hit. And then you go in and you see it. And what you experience did not live up to any of those expectations.
True. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine if I had a time machine.
And so that's what happened with Carl Weathers, that, after this, they blamed him. And you're absolutely right. This is not him. This is not on him, but they blamed him for that. And, additionally, they said, well, look, you can't have a black hero leading action films. Yeah. Look what happened to Action Jackson. And you go, that has nothing to do with the fact that the lead was a black dude. That's not what the problem was here. But that sort of extrapolated. And
I weirdly love that you brought that up just now, that particular point. I hate that lazy thinking by either the media or movie execs. Oh, this is why we can't have, a lead, black male actor. Because I was thinking about this earlier during the tribute section of the podcast, because I was thinking about the negative press that certain actors or actresses received, like in I don't even like saying the title, The Last Jedi, or another character in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and all this stuff, because the fanboys can't handle whatever. And then who is like the counterexample to that in modern times in Star Wars that I didn't even think of until I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have today. And it's so ironic, Carly, you brought that up about Carl Weathers at this time period, when he's the guy who played a prominent role in newer Disney Star Wars, who no one ever cared for a second. No one said, oh no, we don't want that guy to be cast. Oh heck no. It was like always the opposite reaction from Jump Street on that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, he brought a lot to it, and he followed through. He delivered majorly. So that makes a difference.
question, going back to topic of action films with main characters who are black or protagonists who are black. Between this and say, well, this is a lot of time, but I was going to say Black Panther. Can you think of any other action movies where there was a black man in the lead?
Wesley Snipes. Something with Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes, Denzel.
Yeah, no, and you think about the window of time that we're talking about. You can say you get about 2 a decade. So with that scale, yes, you got Wesley Snipes, you got Denzel Washington.
Oh yeah,
so,
Denzel.
So they are in there. But look how long it took and how spread out they are. And of course Samuel L. Jackson. So, but like I said, you get 2 a decade, and that's it. The executive's like, that's enough. That's enough. For action heroes, we can't have too many of them in the theater. So, that's there literally is a quota. So,
wait, does the Rock count? I know we're not supposed to call him the Rock anymore.
Because he crosses over, not really.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, he crosses over.
Yeah, and he never really did action movies. But man, Chiwetel in Red Belt. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it.
Who?
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Oh, Chewie.
The guy who's also in Children of Men.
Oh, okay. Is that how you pronounce his name? I wasn't sure you pronounce his first name. But...
No, it's not quite right.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah, no, he's. But again, he's underrated, right? He's always with
yes,
somebody.
exactly.
He's always with somebody.
Yeah, I guess Idris Elba had his. I guess he didn't make too many, but I feel like he was in a.
Yeah, like Chiwetel, or however you say his name. Apologies. And like Idris, like they're almost sort of like high B tier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not up to like Denzel or Wesley back in the day
in the 90s. Yeah. So, but yeah, there were not that many, and again, it's that kind of lazy thinking where they go,
Michael B. Jordan. I mean, for current day.
Well, yeah, that's current. That's current, but
you say there are not that many, but are there any that were really good?
Well, Denzel Washington?
Denzel. Yeah, Denzel was great.
All the guys we named were good.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the actors. I'm talking about the films.
Sure. I mean, these are good films in there. I mean, if you think about, technically, Demolition Man had Wesley as a second. Mm-hmm. With him as Blade, he literally brought Marvel back from the dead. If Blade had not been a success, they would have had none of the money to continue with the studio and make any of the Avengers films. Blade was such a hit. And it had such a low budget. Again, right, Eric? You got going with a low budget. You get an A-lister, particularly if they happen to be somebody of color, because you're going to bring that audience in. And then if you actually deliver with a good movie, then you really do create a profitable thing. They don't put the equation together. They'll go, well, we're just going to put somebody popular in and give them a crappy movie and skimp on the story, and then they wonder why it's not successful. Every once in a while, they mess up like Blade, and they'll put an A-list actor in there at the right time, and they'll actually put a plot in there, and they'll go, who knew that these films could be so successful?
Yeah, because wasting the good actors, I think that's what's been happening in the recent phases of Marvel. Is what you just described, having like nice, recognizable faces and personalities, and then not working on the story, etc. It's character development, etc. In the newer
common problem with action movies, going back for ages.
Well, I just meant like in the recent MCU, like it took a turn.
Well, again, because it's being driven by executives, right? It's so obvious. You put a good actor, give me a decent story, and it's going to be fun. But they don't build them that way. They build them like from the outside. What's going to be profitable? What do we think is going to fit a certain demographic? And then they just assume that if you put the pieces together, that inside somehow magically the movie is going to be good.
Yeah, I don't even want to break off the scab of.
I'm just speaking.
I'm just going to say Discovery and then forget. Because I felt like you were describing Discovery when you were talking about.
I'm describing corporate influence in entertainment. And this is across the board. This is not just in, one particular genre. This is kind of how it goes. In this case, I happen to be talking about, a black actor in an action film, in action films and why that's been an issue. But the problem is the narrow vision of the executives. It's not just this; they always come in with the money and mess up, what's supposed to be a good show.
Yeah, I forget. It was Silver Pictures, whoever they were. I'll look in a second.
Joel Silver.
Oh, right. But if this had been a Kuroko film in 1988, it would have been amazing.
Kuroko film? What is that?
The studio that
are you talking about Cameron?
No. The studio that did they do the First Blood? But they for sure did part 2.
Okay. I know who you're talking about now. It's not canon. They have a very similar logo, though.
How do you spell it?
Yeah, it looks their logo. You remember it, Carl? The one that looks like. Remember those things were popular? The things that you put like the little incense on the design pattern, and then you burn it.
How do you spell it? How do you?
It's like CAROL.
Yeah, isn't that Cameron? That's not James Cameron.
Is it James?
That's Cameron.
I mean, I know he did the Terminator movies with the studio, or Terminator. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he worked with them, but I don't think he was involved.
Okay, he worked with them. Okay,
yeah, he worked with them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, I agree.
If they had produced this movie, it would have been bonkers because this is before the company failed. There's a great documentary out there on that company.
What is the? How do you pronounce it?
Which company?
It's it's Kuroko. I don't know how to say it.
Kuroko.
That's what I said.
It's like Carol Co. or something like
that. Yeah.
Yes, it's like a lady's name, Carol, and Co.
Co. Right.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the blue marble game that you're talking about. I just
yeah. And I think they did a Total Recall as well.
Yeah.
They did.
And usually the good ones from that studio, they Jerry Goldsmith would be the composer. Oh man, if Jerry Goldsmith had composed the score for this film, it would be so good. It would be so good.
It was Herbie Hancock that co-composed.
Oh, the understudy.
The understudy? Do you guys know who Herbie Hancock is?
I know he's awesome. He's incredible.
He's a producer. He's a musician.
So he did the Pointer Sister stuff, and he did Vanity stuff. So that's that.
I recognize his face. Is he like a Motown guy or something?
Well,
I don't know. Technically,
he did a lot of R&B music from the early 80s. So, including Rocket, which was early techno, actually, but still, it's good. You'll remember it when you look it up. You'll be like, "Oh, this guy."
He did Fat Albert. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh Jesus Christ!
The 2003 movie, or was it 2002?
No, the original in '69.
Okay.
I'm talking about Hancock.
Well, that song was the bomb. So yeah.
Well, he worked with Quincy Jones. Yeah, for that one.
Yeah, Quincy Jones.
Are we allowed to watch Fat Albert again?
Well, the original.
You can watch it. You might be uncomfortable by it, but I don't know. It depends on the person.
I won't be uncomfortable.
I don't get uncomfortable with the fatness. I just get uncomfortable.
Yeah, with a certain somebody.
Like, oh my God, Bill Cosby.
Well, he's fenced in for all the scenes, so there's no danger.
Sean, this should be your first TikTok because I know you want to kick off your account. Is just film yourself watching the animated Fat Albert and just post that on TikTok.
I wouldn't know how to do that. No. I'll. You know what? I want to be canceled as soon as possible, so I'm going to have a video of myself playing Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh dear! Cut that out of the tape.
Yeah, the tape's starting to run thin here.
I'm sorry. It's my fault. It's
okay. We're gonna get what do you call it? Demonetized on YouTube. Okay. Does anyone else have any final thoughts?
Just in summary, when we were going to do a tribute to Carl Weathers, and you suggested Action Jackson, obviously I had seen it before, so I was like, I'm going to assume he hasn't seen Action Jackson, and I'm going to go into this with an open mind, and I'm curious to hear how Eric will receive this. So, Carl Weathers has done some fantastic stuff throughout his career. This is not one of my favorite films of his, but it is important, and it shows what the potential could have been. The timing, everything was just right, and if this had been better, he really would have taken off with this. This would have been the first of a series of films. So,
okay, so I have a question for you, Carl. As part of your review, So let's say if you got to choose a film, which one would you choose?
You mean a Carl Weathers film?
Yes.
Weathers? God. Well, see, the problem is he didn't really get the lead beyond.
I mean, if you were to choose a film that we would talk about in this podcast.
Rocky 2.
Okay, cool.
Predator.
Oh, why Rocky 2? Why Rocky 2? I want to hear about why Rocky 2.
Well, it was the introduction, and it was the first time you really see him come out as a strong actor. We didn't know, who he was going to be. He really, again, both in Predator and in Rocky, for a random black actor to come in and literally be able to stand face to face with the lead action white actor and it be believable and be real, that is a remarkable thing. And for him to do that twice, I mean, literally the hand, that clasping of the arms in Predator is just definitive. And you're like, how is this dude pulling this off, with this degree of power and with this degree of authority? He managed to do that. And it's really amazing that he was able, at that time, to be able to step into these films and represent that way. It's just unheard of. And so both Rocky, Predator, him coming in, being sincere.
I just wanted to say, because I heard you say Rocky 2 specifically, and that's why my spidey sense went up.
Yeah.
Let me just say one thing about Rocky 2 specifically, because I love the entire franchise immensely, including Creed, not the most recent one, but everything else. I love it so much, and I rewatch all the movies. Not the most recent Creed. I watch them all like many times over, and Rocky 2 has always been the one I revisit the least frequently of the bunch. Okay. Yeah. And because it feels like it brings less new to the table, even though that's not really true. But anyway, that's just my shorthand way of explaining it now. But the one part I really love about that movie, and I wasn't sure if you were specifically talking about Rocky 2 when you just said what you said, but I was thinking that you were. And so you just made me think something new about the movie, because you're right. In the first film, Carl Weathers' Apollo is sort of one note. He's sort of, obviously the villain. And when the second movie starts, it picks up like right after the end of the fight, and they go to the hospital, and like Apollo is still talking all this crazy smack. Because at the end of the first one, Apollo says there ain't going to be no rematch. But as soon as they get to the hospital, he's like, oh, rematch, blah, 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 and then, all the crazy antics. But then, because you talked about learning more about the guy, the character, I love the part, and of course it's in the dialogue. It was written and directed by Stallone, Rocky 2 was. But when Rocky comes over to his room at night in the hospital,
yes,
and he's like, hey, Apollo, yeah, Rock, I just want to ask you one thing. Like, last night, did you give it your all? And he's just like, yeah, man. Yeah, dude. Oh my God! That was so good! Because that's when you knew, there's more to this tale.
Yes, exactly.
So good.
We're going to have a segment in the show in which, Eric does Rocky scenes. You've already impressed us with your Burgess Meredith.
Oh, no.
This is very good. I didn't know you were so into Rocky, sir.
Oh, I really, really, really am. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, someday on the Best Picture podcast, we'll get there.
Oh, I know. I can't wait. But yeah, Carl remind me. So even though that's my least rewatched, that's one of the best scenes in the franchise.
It's beautiful.
Nice. I feel great right now. Yeah. So are we ready to rate it? Does anyone have a unit of measure?
Vanity syringes.
Oh yeah. It's got to be that. I didn't even think about how comical it looked until somebody brought it up.
I mean, it was like stainless steel. They were huge.
You guys go ahead before I give my rating.
Contestant in stainless steel. Sorry.
All right. So what are we out of 5? Out of 5 syringes?
Of course.
Action Jackson, for all its potential and everything, I'm going to have to give it 3. 3 syringes.
All right. It's good. It's good. I like it.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. With the comedy element, I give maybe a 2. I think it's up to 2 with that. I can't bump it up more. That's all I got for it.
Is that the thing that's holding it back
Wow.
the most for you? Like,
Wow.
like is the comedy or lack thereof?
Oh, that's what boosts it up. If it wasn't for the comedy, this would just be
Oh, that's what boosted it up.
this would just be very bland and forgettable.
So without a comedy, this movie has no merit. It's a 0 stars, like a Roger Ebert 0. Like you're eating your donuts on Sunday and you open up the Roger Ebert page. Fuck, 0 stars. And it's North by Rob Reiner. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just feel like this movie really doesn't do anything. Yeah, I think Carl said it doesn't really add anything new. Everything I feel like I've seen other movies and I've seen better.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that really makes it worth seeing is the comedy elements. And I feel like they're not quite consistent enough to make this like
This is weird.
a classic, so bad it's good movie.
It is weird.
But it's worth seeing. But I would not say that it's necessarily what you need to see, more than once.
Oh, Sean, are you even going to rate this one?
You didn't watch it.
No, I'm going to give it an NA. I'm merely here for the colorful commentary that is often sucking.
Oh.
What?
Sucky. I'm here for the horrible commentary that is often sucky. No, it's terrible.
I thought you were going to say succulent, but okay.
No, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's a noun, Eric. Okay, Eric, please review. No,
yeah.
No, succulent not a commie. Commentary.
Eric, you've been drinking water.
Yeah, get on with it.
Yes. Okay, so for me, if I try to be more objective about this movie, then I would agree with Carl. It's a 3, I would say. But and objectively also factoring nostalgia for the period, and if anyone knows me, I love almost any mainstream 80s movie, almost, no matter what it is. So I would give it a 3 with my version of an objective rating. But over the course of the conversation, I already felt myself bump up to a 3.5 easily. But now I am, for my personal rating, it's a 4.
Oh my goodness.
Comical stainless steel. No, I'm serious. Like, I am definitely going to watch this again. There's no doubt about it, because I already knew some parts I liked when I watched it by myself. But after we talked about it, there's other parts I need to re-examine and rewatch. I really enjoyed it. And I will also say, when I started watching it for the first time, in the first 5 to 10 minutes, I was like, we may have made a huge mistake. It felt like an oncoming train wreck in the first 5 to 10 minutes. But as it just kept going in these weird, unexpected turns, because while it does contain all these elements we've seen before, the way it feels, like the flow of the story, it's very Frankenstein. Like they've literally like how they make a what is it called? Like, I don't know if it's called a rough cut or something, or sizzle reel. Like when someone's trying to pitch something to a studio, and you just chop up segments of other work that's already been produced and then put it together, and this just kind of represents the vibe I'm going for. This is a weird sizzle reel of 80s cop action tropes, and the plot weirdly makes these left and right turns that don't make any sense, but it was so much fun to me. I wanted to mention Biff because he didn't get mentioned. I really wanted to mention him.
Oh yeah,
he's another cameo. He's just there for the sake of being there.
Biff Tannen.
Yeah. Officer Kornblau. And, Bill Duke, who was also in Predator and many other things. Yep. Captain Earl Armbruster. But it very much looks like it says Armbuster on his desk nameplate, but it's Armbruster.
So wait, you're telling me there's a scene where the cop has to confront his captain, and the captain is upset with him because of his poor behavior and is warning him just one more time.
Where's Jackson?
Who could have seen?
You got to get your head right, man.
Get in my office.
Yeah.
Man, and then Robert Davi, oh man, Sharon Stone. Like I always thought like her first nude scene was in the aforementioned Michael Douglas movie. Yeah, nope, wrong. Action Jackson. And she even looks like she's playing a character, a murdered character, spoiler, from why can I not remember the name?
No, you said the aforementioned Michael Douglas movie, and you said,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, actually,
yeah, Basic Instinct, of course, you're right." But no, here in Action Jackson, we get her. There's some fake blood, but still, this movie's great. I'm gonna rewatch it. I'm gonna let it play. I'm gonna let it sink into me. I'm gonna pay attention to the score next time because I don't remember it right now.
It's bad.
It was great. I don't think I'm having a Skyline moment. I don't smell burnt toast, so I'm not having a stroke. I really enjoyed it. And then talking to you guys, even though you guys didn't really like it that much, you made me like it more.
We're sorry.
I want to watch this. I want to watch this so bad, having heard all three of your perspectives on it. In fact, I think this is a great basis for a new podcast. 2 or 3 people watch a movie, the other one doesn't, and then they have to go back and watch it and give their opinion after hearing everybody else's opinion.
We could make it a new segment on Prognosis Negative where we take turns being the person who doesn't watch it.
And that being said, is where's the streaming, or did you all have to get it on DVD? Or
well,
I had it on DVD.
I don't believe it's streaming for free anywhere at the moment. But you can purchase it regular or rent it streaming like the usual way.
Like from Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not so obscure that. Okay, cool.
And actually, it might be a Movies Anywhere, meaning I had bought it on Vudu, but I think it's popping up on my other services as well now.
Okay.
Not that anyone cares or knows what I'm talking about, but yeah.
Well, Eric, if it turns out that you like just cheesy, bad action movies, I've got a bunch that I can pull out. Ones that I think are more humorous.
It's hard to say because Robert Rodriguez was trying to capture that during his Grindhouse era of films. And I do like Planet Terror, but man, as much as I try to enjoy the Machete movies, I just can't. I just can't with those.
It's no fun when it's intentionally bad. It just makes it feel cheap.
Yeah, so I don't know that I could like. If it's from the 80s, I'll probably like it. But when it's getting more closer to modern times, no, not necessarily, not at all. So it just depends, but. And then some of the comical flips and things, I was like, man, this is like a little taste of Fast and Furious before Fast and Furious. Not because of the car action, but just the over the top, like strange, like quasi superhero abilities. It was great, man, and I thought it was going to be terrible, like I said, but then
it is terrible. I was laughing throughout that stuff.
I was pleasantly surprised. And now I got to see Cobra because I've never seen that either.
You've never seen Cobra? Oh,
no.
All right.
I've been meaning to for like the last 8 or 9 years, and I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it.
Right. So I do want to say this one thing about that because there is a sort of action cop genre from the 80s, and it had a certain style to it. And again, there are certain. There's a vibe that they've got going on.
Yeah,
Cobra gets it right. Now, Cobra is a bad movie, but they were trying. It's like if you made Miami Vice harder, right? It's like how Miami Vice has a vibe, a feel. It's got a music. The cinematography is on point. Imagine that just slightly harder, and that's what Cobra is. It's got no plot. It's ridiculous. The villain is over the top, but I actually really like Cobra for what it is. So again, you can work with the genre, you can do stuff with it, but it has to have a consistency in terms of the feel. It's he's
Yeah.
not cracking jokes in the middle of Cobra. All right, it's just he's got some lines in there, but it flows. So I like Cobra for the silliness of what it was. I like big old Bridget Nielsen. She's beautiful in it. So it's fun. It's
Yeah, I'm thinking. I think if I liked Action Jackson this much, now I'm getting crazy built up for Cobra because I think it's going to knock it out of the park. And then I know we're ending now, but I'm still thinking about when Carl was talking about how the genre, like these are like the late days of this being, the toast of summer Hollywood. And I was just thinking, like, because this obviously still feels very rooted in the 80s. I know it's the 80s. But then I'm thinking about transition movies to, like, the next era. And, like, so when you were used to seeing movies like this, and then for me personally, seeing, like, Point Break for the first time with Patrick Swayze, I felt like, okay, now we're going somewhere else. Like, like something cooler with, like, the 90s action movies. Because Point Break, it's not too many years removed from this, but it feels a lot more modern than like what we're more used to in the 90s.
Sure. Yeah, they got bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, my gosh, it's been a blast. We've never done a tribute show before. I really enjoyed this. Man, someone let me know, someone on the call or someone who's a listener, let me know when someone else comes up. I mean, tragically and sadly, but
oh no,
hey, more tribute shows in the future. This was so great. Man, I'm still thinking about Carl. And closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Sean.
This is Caleb.
And this is Carl.
And until next time,
the balcony is yours.
Prognosis negative.
Carl, this is your first time on ProgNeg, isn't it? Or is it? I don't even know.
I believe so.
It might not be, but I'm not sure.
Nope. He was on for Godzilla vs. Kong, the reboot of ProgNeg.
Oh, was that? That was. Wow. All right. Second time.
Yeah, all those years ago.
A long time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was ProgNeg. I get all that Godzilla stuff mixed up with Novice.
Me too.
There'll never be another like you.
I thought you were going to say the balcony is yours.
Oh.
That would work.
But then what would I say at the end? I get we could edit that in if someone could think of like an iconic Carl Weathers character line. I don't have one chambered.
Some damn fool accused you of being the best. It's the only one I can think of from Predator.